Mr. Clerk, it's 7 o'clock. I'll call this council meeting to order. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Kim, second by Councillor Gartner. Council, just to let you know, under community presentations, Captain Rosie Dagur will not be here tonight. She will be coming at another council meeting. Unfortunately, they ran into some issues and couldn't make it here this evening, so that will not be happening. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Delegations. We have one delegation tonight, Mr. Philippe Barkamenko. There you go. I'm terrible at names, am I? In regards to item R3 from the General Committee report, fence exemption requests for 203 St. John Side Road West. Just let you remind you have 5 minutes, and at 1 minute you'll hear a chime. Okay. The floor is yours.
Yeah. As mentioned, my name is Philip Barkamenko. I'm speaking on behalf of Constantine Olibin, property 3 St. John Side Road West, regarding case bylaw exemption for the wooden fence. First off, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me the time to address the council today. Over the course of the year, we've been working with the city in coordinating the planting of trees along the fence of 203 St. John Side Road West. In the month of September, we felt a sharp negative turn in our discussions with the city. Based on the turn in discussions, Constantine had felt stressed and worried about the ongoing situation. The stressful thought of having to live without the fence and go back to suffering from the constant noise had made Constantine feel very uncomfortable. Considering the fence protects the property from the excessive noise coming from constant traffic, due to this, Constantine decided to sell and list his property for sale. Once Constantine had received a proposal to sell, that's when he realized he was making a mistake. Constantine then had instantly removed the property from the market, and the home is no longer for sale, as seen in attachment number 2 in the memorandum sent over to the council earlier last week. Personally, I don't believe the idea of the wooden fence poses a disturbance to the residents of Aurora. Within Aurora, it's well known that it's a custom to build noise-suppressing wood fences, as noted in the memorandum on locations such as St. John's Side Road, Wellington Street, Leslie, and Tree Grove Street. These fences don't ruin the aesthetic of the area, and in result, only protect homeowners from busy streets. Residents around Aurora don't seem to be bothered by these fences, as their sole purpose is understandable. Additionally, there's also been a precedent already set in April 2011 as an exemption was made to place a wooden fence in the front yard of St. John, in the front yard on Leslie Street. As you see in the attachment, this one over here, as you see in the attachment above, which is why we request that the council accept our exemption to leave the current fence and give us the ability to plant beautiful trees along the frontage of the house, as seen as in attachment number 8 over here. If you could the next one, thank you. So this is our proposal for the trees in front of the wood fence. With your approval, we'll plant the trees along the fence and we'll continue to maintain the grass as well as the tree line in front of the home as we've been doing so to date. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gartner, any comments or questions to the delegate? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions regarding your current situation. I understand the house is off the market now, but the intention of planting the trees in front of the fence, to my understanding, has kind of come to a standstill, and I kind of wanted to understand from you the process and where you felt that was at, because as far as I was concerned, it's a regional road and you need permission from the region, not the council to actually plant those trees. So I wanted to know where that stood, because as far as I was understanding, we haven't heard anything.
So,
Mr. Parker-Mengel?
Yeah. So we were in discussions with a gentleman from the town of Aurora with the matter of planting the trees and going back and forth with drawings of sketches of how it would look. Then we had a little bit of a delay because we were requested to get an official landscaper sketch. And to date, the discussions that we had came to a halt when a survey was requested, and which we had some delays with acquiring. And then shortly after the property was, once we had a little bit of a struggle, as mentioned, Constantine felt a little bit stressed with the ongoing situation of over a year and decided to list the property. And again, as I mentioned, once he received the proposal to sell his property, he realized he was making a mistake, as he wants to live in Aurora. He likes the area.
Counselor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but as far as like the survey, which is really the permission to actually plant the trees, which seems to be held up, and you said you were speaking with people within the town, but from what I understand, that's been kind of a silent board for quite a few months, and I think that's kind of where this is stemmed from, is that we don't feel like there was any collaboration as far as a standstill, and then the house suddenly goes up for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give me some sort of answer as to why there was no further communication in this regard?
Well, originally, when the discussions had started, it was in the month of March, and we noted that we were going to be planning up until fall to plant before the winter time. So as the time was going by, we were going back and forth, and there was obviously delays between conversations, and as time ran by, we are where we are today. But we've been completely compliant with all requests and have been doing everything as diligently as possible to comply with such.
Counselor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Do you know the last approximate date that you had communication with the town with where this had left off?
So I believe it was middle of September, where we were notified that the exemption was going to be passed as a refusal because we didn't. First off, it was mentioned that we were going to have the refusal because we didn't have the survey within there was no time frame, but we tried acquiring the survey as soon as possible, and it wasn't on our behalf that it was an issue of acquiring it. It was actually the company that we hired. Everything was completely done. All the appointments and measurements were done within 2 or 3 weeks, and then the draft itself, the gentleman that was taking care of the drafting the survey itself fell ill, and he was away from work for over a month. So during the course of that time, also Constantine, in that month, Constantine decided to, once he started feeling pressured, he decided to list the property for sale.
Counselor?
So your surveyor had fell ill and was not able to complete the job, and was that at all communicated to our staff so we knew to wait patiently while we remedied the situation?
So once we mentioned that there were still delays, we weren't notified that he fell ill, so we were going back and forth, and once I mentioned to him that they assured us that next week, which was early October, that it was going to be prepared, and we were assured that it was going to be prepared for then, that's when we were notified that our case was going to be submitted for refusal. Whereas in terms of the survey, we still didn't even receive it that week that I'm mentioning. We actually only received it just less than 2 weeks ago. And I've been going back and forth with the survey company about 2 times a week for about 2 months now. And they just kept delaying the process. And afterwards, they did tell us that it was the person that was capable of drafting the survey, because it is a little bit extensive, because it's a little bit of a specific property, not exactly a subdivision property. They told us that there's only one gentleman in the office that was capable of doing so. And that we received I requested them to send us an official letter stating the situation being. So that's where we are to date with that. But to answer your question, we've been trying to comply with every request and providing any information that was requested.
Counselor?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I guess my concern is, regardless of the situation and with the surveyor and such, and then the house going up for sale. And I know you're saying it was a mistake. It really calls to question whether or not there was an intent to get this completed, because once that does change hands, it does create a new problem. I guess another question I had for you was about your gate, and I wanted to know if this was something that was built in around the same time, or was it quite some time ago? Was it the same contractor? If you can give me a little bit more history of that gate, it would be helpful.
I believe it was built around the same time. We brought this issue up earlier in the year during our first delegation with the city, and sorry, just getting an exact time frame for you. Just a year ago, last year in August.
And I'm assuming there was no permit that you guys had applied for this gate, or some sort of exemption at that time with a gate that was well over the height that was meant, like, in their bylaw.
Personally, I'm not too sure if a permit was acquired or not. We did hire a licensed contractor to do so. So Constantine was the one that was actually overseeing the whole construction for that. But last year we did bring up the points of adjacent properties with much higher fences, which was majority of the reason why we were allowed to keep the fence as it is, considering the house just parallel to us, which is about 10 meters away in front of us, has a 5-meter gate.
Thank
Councillor?
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for presenting. And it would seem that the purpose of the fence was mainly for to create a sound barrier. Did Mr. Constantine at all consider other noise dampening measures inside the room or inside the house itself, whether it be updating his windows or the walls? It seems like that would be a more cost-efficient option than building that long fence. Was that ever considered?
I believe Constantine considered it before, but as the home itself was built in 1970s, changing the soundproofing the walls would have been a very expensive option, and that's why we explored the building of the fence. And again, it's mainly to, not just to do with the sound barrier, but has to do with Constantine's severe insomnia, and where it became, when he initially moved into the property, there was no fence there, and he was suffering for quite some time until he made the decision to install the fence. And that's why he hired a professional contractors that were supposed to be reputable to enlighten him of the bylaws and permits required to carry out such procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, you change your mind? Thank you. Thank you very much. Call the vote. That carries. Council consent agenda. 4 items. Any comments, questions on any of those? Or I'll ask someone to move C1 to C4. Councillor Gallo?
Separately, please.
Sure. So can I get a motion for C2 to C4? Councillor Kim, second. Councillor Gilliland. So we'll do C2 to C4 first. Call a vote. Thank you, that carries. Now we will go back to C1 on its own. Someone like to move this? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Kim. Did you want to say something, or you're just going to vote? You made an error? It's a long C1? Okay. All right. I'll call the vote. It's all right. You just made us do some extra work, that's all. Yes, I see which one, yes, no problem. That carries. We'll move to standing committee reports. Would anything like to be pulled? C1, I'm assuming, Councillor Gallo. For a vote? Thank you. Anything else on that, Councillor Gallo? Do you want anything else pulled? Did you want to pull R3? I mean, we did have a delegate. Okay, we'll just pull R3. Because I'm assuming someone would pull it anyway, so. Anything else? No. Councillor Thompson, welcome. Would you like to pull anything? C1 and R3. You want me to come back to you? Okay. Councillor Gardner. You're good? Councillor Kim? Good. Councillor Gilliland? Good. Back to you, Councillor Thompson. Nope. All right. Can I get a motion to approve A1, A2, A3, R1, R2, R4, and R5? Councillor Kim. Second. Councillor Gallo. Call a vote. That carries. So we will go to C1, S1, C1. Someone like to move that? Councillor Kim, second. No seconder? Councillor Thompson? Comments or questions, or are we just calling the vote? Call a vote. That carries. R3, fence bylaw exemption request. Someone want to move? Recommendations? Moved by Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland, comments or questions? Councillor Kim. Oh, Councillor Thompson, sorry. I was watching his hand while you were pushing the button. Councillor Kim, go ahead.
I am for staff's recommendation for regarding the fence, but regarding the gates, we received confirmation today, and I think most of us knew from a prior presentation that the origin of the gate was similar in date to the fence. I think upon new measurement, depending on which source, whether it's staff or another third-party source, you're looking at a 2 or 3 foot variance on the height at the center of the gate. That's roughly 30 to upwards of 45% increase, surpassing our height limits. Now, I understand that we, as council, are acting similar to that of a committee of adjustment for zoning, but even they have set parameters. It's for minor variance, and so with last week we discussed a 6-inch variance, and I can understand for those of you that think that 6 inches is not significant enough to override the exemption, but now that it's 2 or 3 feet, does that make a difference? And, I guess that's my question to my fellow colleagues is, If it was 5 feet, would that make a difference? Or 1 feet? I think for me, even 6 inches was a significant enough height for me, and that now that it's 2 to 3 feet, it's even more so. So even if we did act as a committee of adjustment, I think even committee of adjustments, when you look at all the criteria that they follow, I think this would surpass that of a minor variance. I can go on about other items, but I don't think it's related to this core item, so I'm not going to go there. But I would like to vote separately again, similar to last week, and vote on number 3 separately.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, and actually, sorry, one more other item is that, we spent a lot of time through Stable Neighborhoods and other similar items in the past. Stable Neighborhoods, we spent about 2 years discussing that, about design and, massing and all those other items. And so I don't think this is not that much different. So we placed a certain amount of importance on design, functionality, respecting neighbors and the existing parameters. And so, for us to just kind of poo-poo all that and now allow something that's significantly offside, I'm just kind of beside myself on that regard. So I think those are the things that we have to consider and weigh and be consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We will do 1, 2, 4, and separate from 3 for you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Is it possible to put a picture up of the gate?
Do we have a picture? An actual photo or no?
There would have been one from, I think, maybe previous reports. I'm not sure if it was included in this last round of reports, but that one's fine for the time being, if that's all we have. Or perhaps you could look for one while I ask a question of Mr. Waters.
It's fine.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, we've had a bit of a conversation about this, and I just wanted to confirm that in some municipalities, these kind of exemptions are dealt with by the Committee of Adjustment. Is that correct?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. For example, Mississauga and Vaughan do delegate this responsibility to a Committee of Adjustment.
Councillor?
Certainly going forward, I would be an advocate of doing that, and I'd encourage you to give that some thought. But it's certainly how I approach this situation in terms of looking at the gate. For the fence, I don't consider it minor in nature, which is one of the tests of the Committee of Adjustment, and so I'm not in favor of the fence staying. But the gate I did. And the gate I did look at it from a Committee of Adjustment perspective. I also had a chance to look at some old photos, and to the best of my recollection, it's interesting to note that the pillars that the gate is attached to, just leave the other one up for a second. The pillars, which are as high as the gate, if you look at old Google photos, go all the way back to 2009. So I'm not sure how we want to also treat that, whether the pillars or the gate need to be removed based upon council's decision, but for a long period of time, those pillars were there as well. But that aside, yes, definitely part of the gate is over, and I certainly appreciate the correct information coming forward to us to the degree of which the peak is above it. There is a fair bit of it that is at the 2-meter height, and which would qualify. And so then the question becomes, is that portion worthy of a variance, or is it minor in nature? From my perspective, and looking at how a Committee of Adjustment would deal with it, I don't think it's not suitable or appropriate. You take a drive in that area and you'll see a lot of fences that are in excess of 2 meters of height, so it's not unique in that sense. And granted, that's a whole other issue, whether or not we want to be fair, and then if we choose to deny this one, do we then look at those that are not in compliance and then take action, or do we grandfather them, or how are we going to deal with that? That's a whole other perspective, I guess. But when I look at those tests that we do for the Committee of Adjustments, I'm comfortable with allowing this variance. And had we had that process in place, who's to say how they would have, how the Committee of Adjustment would have voted? But for me, I see it as, in theory, minor in nature. And so I'll be supporting the gate as well as denying the fence.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallo.
Just a couple questions to staff. I reread the report again today, and I heard the reference to 6 inches last week. I think it was from Councillor Kim, but I didn't read anywhere where it said that, and unless there was some communication from staff, or I don't know where that 6 inches came from, because I based my decision last week on that assumption that it was that distance, which to me was quite minor, and it swayed me to say, you know, not that far off.
So I'll go to Ms. Van Loon. Ms. Van Loon, where did the 6 inches come from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I requested an officer go out and take a measurement so that I would have that measurement last week if I was asked the question. And so, if I recall correctly, it came up at the general committee meeting last week when we were having a conversation. And then we received an email suggesting that maybe that was not an accurate measurement. So I requested that staff went out again and took another measurement. Now, I have to say that height is a defined term, and it's measured from the highest point of grade within 2 feet on either side of the gate to the highest point. So if the grade is sloping, it doesn't necessarily, you can't necessarily take the measurement from the grade at that highest point. You sort of have to level the grade out.
Yeah,
Councillor?
There was a discrepancy on that as well. Okay, so I drew a blank on where that 6 inches came from. The other question, this is a regional road, so is Wellington, and rightfully so, and I don't know the answer, and I didn't have a chance to ask prior to, but the fence, the famous fence, infamous fence, that there will be extensive landscaping, I'm told, on Wellington south side, just west of Leslie. How does that fit in to our bylaw? Why does that comply and this one doesn't as a regional road?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Waters may want to comment on this. I'm sure it's a requirement of it's a condition of subdivision agreement, and the region would have been circulated on those conditions of the agreement. But if Mr. Waters would like to,
Just before we go there, from a bylaw perspective, does that one comply?
it does. There is some language around how a condition of a subdivision agreement would supersede. Yeah, I believe there is. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Waters, did you
Well,
want to continue that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think Ms. Van Leeuwen addressed the question appropriately. That's a noise fence, and its height is determined through study to mitigate the noise from the residents. And the residents, you have to also remember that that's their backyard as well. So, and it will be extensively landscaped as part of the subdivision agreement.
Councillor?
Thank you. I think I see this going two ways, because as we've already seen, there are definitely complications in it, and if I was in the residents' shoes, you know, I would be somewhat annoyed that, you know, I'm trying to build a noise fence, yet others can do it under certain other circumstances. So it becomes somewhat confusing. At the same time, it doesn't comply with the bylaw. Neither does the gate. To me, I see this in two different approaches. Either we say no because it doesn't comply, and the next step is to source out all of the others that don't comply and make sure they comply, or we revisit the bylaw and adjust it so that this and others comply. Simply saying no to this, I don't think solves the bigger picture, because if I was this gentleman and we don't agree with this, I would be disappointed if I would be going around and measuring others and pointing them out to us and saying, these also don't comply. Why are you picking on me? And I think he has a pretty good argument. So I don't know whether we're going to solve this tonight, because there are a lot of questions that I think need to be answered. We could, somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction and say no to both. But I think it's incumbent upon us to fix the bigger picture. And I'm interested in hearing the rest of my colleagues to see their views on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. And it was also brought to my attention the variance and the measurements, and I did have some offline conversations, and I think I had talked to staff before about other municipalities that did have some sort of variance, and I was quite interested when I did discover there is a gate variance that other municipalities do have. I know you had used that as an example, Mississauga, I believe. I had come across a clause in Caledon, where the director has the delegated authority, and there's a set of guidelines that would be followed within the context of the bylaw. And looking at this gate and understanding the look and the feel, I feel this is something that perhaps staff could have delegated authority and makes that kind of an example. And if that was the case, it would be exempt today. And just touching on some of the things that was outlined, which I thought was quite interesting, was whether it's in accordance with the general intent and the purpose of the bylaw, would it result in keeping the surrounding area, would there be any negative impact or adjacent residents? Is there an unnecessary difficulty or hardship to the applicant? Is there a resultant impacts to health, safety, or welfare of the public? Just a few examples. And so there are some specific guidelines, and I do feel that this could fall under an application in this, and perhaps maybe there is room for us to refresh our bylaws, just considering it was pointed out by a resident by driving around the neighborhood for half an hour that 70% of the gates that currently reside on estate properties with iron fences are not in compliance. So clearly this is not an outlier, and maybe perhaps back in the day when these homes were built, maybe the bylaws were different, and maybe this was an oversight. I'm not certain. I can't say for certain, but maybe there is an opportunity here for us to assess our current bylaw and maybe explore the idea of a gate variance, because there is a bigger picture here. Like Councillor Gallo was saying, let's start taking our tape measure out and point at everybody else, including the property parallel to the current resident at 5 meters, which is well over the current bylaw. So I would rather address it in a way that's going to solve the bigger picture. And I would rather just support this motion moving forward and revisit our current bylaw, just like we are with the other ones: noise bylaw, property standards, clean yards, licensing. There's lots on the go, and we're willing to open the can on those, and maybe this is an opportunity where we need to revisit and revise something that kind of fits within our town and modernizes moving forward.
Councillor Gardner, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, what is the purpose? First of all, how old is this bylaw, and what would you say the purpose is of it?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a 2005 bylaw. However, the town has had a fence bylaw since the 80s at least, maybe even further back. And it is to put some regulation around heights and locations. And, for example, in most residential neighborhoods, the height of a fence in the front yard cannot exceed 1 meter because of sightline issues and things like that. So, I would say also pool enclosures are part of this bylaw, and pool enclosures do require a permit, but fences that don't enclose pools are not subject to permits.
Councillor.
So this fence wouldn't be subject to a permit, but we would have expected the contractor to know our bylaw.
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, correct. A permit's not required. However, we would expect a fence contractor to check our bylaw. Most municipalities have a fence bylaw.
Counselor?
And I remember we talked about this before, and so it's a situation where a person is, well, trusting a contractor, and then the contractor doesn't seem to know the bylaws. So who is at fault here, and what are the consequences? There's not only a problem with the gate, and the height of the fence, but isn't it also the closed-in structure of the fence?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the wooden fence, yes, is above and beyond the height requirements. It's also the wrong materials, whereas the gate itself is of appropriate materials, being wrought iron. The gate, or the fence, board on board is not a permitted material.
And
Counselor?
could you just say the reason for that? Why it's not permitted?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would guess it has to do with sort of the perception of fortification.
Counselor?
That's all for the moment.
Thank you. Counselor Kim, before I go back to you, Ms. Van Leeuwen, could someone apply for a noise fence? Like a permit to build a noise fence through the region? Or would they just go to the region and get it, or could you apply for it on your own?
To you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't believe so. It would require, if it was simply for a noise attenuation, they would have to come here and go through a process through council at the present time
So
for
there's-
that exemption.
So there's a process to follow to get a noise fence.
To get an exemption
To
to
get an
the
exemption
current
to build.
fence bylaw, yes.
Thank you. You know, and I'm not going to go through everything I said because we're at council and we've said this so many times, but for me, the issue isn't whether, how much, how little, is it above. I think our fence bylaw is fine. I think we've set a standard and it's working perfectly fine. The issue to me is the fact that someone has done something without following the proper process. We talk about it all the time. They're not following the proper process, and they're asking for forgiveness after the fact. That's where my issue is. If this was a developer, if this was a builder, what would each one of us be saying tonight? Would we be saying exempt that builder, or would we be saying would be a harder line on that? And I understand it's a resident, and I believe I've been lenient on this because it's been a resident. If this was a builder, I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs. And everyone knows that here, that I would be doing that. But I think that because it's a fact that it was done in complete ignorance after the fact and asked for forgiveness, I think sets a dangerous precedent moving forward. And so therefore, I will still continue to vote against allowing the exemption. Councillor Kim.
You know, this situation reminds me of a man working on his 8th Coors Light at a swim-up bar. You know, I've been sitting there for 4 hours wondering, everyone's wondering, how come he hasn't moved in 4 hours? Well, we already know, we have bylaws in place and people don't obey our bylaws. Some of our bylaws are written in a language that's, extremely precise and narrowly applied, while others, are written in a language that's broad and capable of more than one reasonable explanation. So our bylaws are very deliberate in how they're written. This is a precise and clear bylaw that states an actual figure. And so for us to now change how we interpret it and say it's just a small variance or any other type of excuse, unlike other bylaws where, we give a broad language so that, we can be as flexible as possible. This is pretty inflexible. It's a number. In terms of, sure, I understand that 70% or whatever amount of gates in that neighborhood and perhaps other parts of town are higher than our bylaws. But does that make it right for newly created gates to surpass our what our bylaw requirement is? I mean, I think the word that we're going to be seeing and hearing quite a bit is grandfathering, because we have a ton of bylaws out there that's in the same situation as this. So does it mean that we're going to overlook every single bylaw? We have residents who are encroaching upon town property, boulevards, whether it be their driveways through driveway extension, widenings. We have their and encroaching upon our sidewalks and causing distraction, or what the word terminology is for the sight lines. So there's a lot of, this is not just for gate, it's about everything. And so if we're going to allow this now, then we might as well not even have bylaws. I think what we're going to have to do is grandfather, and it's as simple as that. And every other bylaw is going to have to be some kind of grandfathering requirement, and you're going to have to put a set time to that. This gate was built 2 years ago. There was no due diligence done. I'm sure there was ignorance on the part of the resident and perhaps the contractor, willingly or unwillingly. And I'm empathetic to the resident. Why me? It's the most recent. There's some gates that were there 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So where are we going to start? We're going to have to start from somewhere. Whether we start today or whether we start next year or 6 months from now, it's going to have to start from somewhere. So we can't keep on punting the football, hoping that the situation is going to get better or staff's going to have a magic bullet for this. So I'm not in support of the exemption of the gates, and I'll go from there.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Waters again. Mr. Waters, going back to the Committee of Adjustment, is somebody allowed to make an application to the Committee of Adjustment after the fact of something being built or whatever?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. That's the reason to have the Committee of Adjustment, is to make, to vary or provide relief to bylaws.
So the process allows somebody to come forward to the municipality after something's built to ask for a variance.
That's correct. Through
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
And I would say no every time.
It's legal, though.
And I would say no every time.
It's legal.
And I would say no every time. No every time. Councillor Gardner.
But the process we have right now is not, it doesn't go to the Committee of Adjustment, so it's coming to council. So, and if council makes the decision, it can't, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters, then they wouldn't be able to go to the Committee of Adjustment after council has made a decision, I assume.
Mr. Waters, if council makes a decision tonight, could this still go to a Committee of Adjustment?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, it cannot.
Thank
Okay, thank
Councillor.
you. So through to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, if we're going to look at the situation in town with all of these non-conforming fences and gates, you've heard Councillor Kim speak. What would you suggest? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with all of the non-conforming fences and gates in town? Where would you suggest we draw the line? It's just an opinion.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't suggest that we go back in time and
Try.
because we don't know when they were constructed. We don't know so if they were constructed prior to the bylaws coming into force. So it would be a challenge to go forward and ensure all of those properties were in compliance. So I think, from what I understood from Councillor Kim, is that this is a go forward. That going forward, we want to ensure that any newly constructed gates, if they came to our attention, that they would be compliant.
Councillor Gardner?
Could we put it in our fence bylaw that people have to come to? Oh, we've been in the fence bylaw before. That people would have to come to the town if they are building a fence, and that way we could ensure compliance.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could amend the fence bylaw to include a permit requirement for all fences.
It would solve a lot of
It would increase
problems.
workload significantly.
Would we,
Resourcing would be likely an issue, because if you think we have over 20,000 properties, residential properties.
but
in
we're
the
only
town.
talking new properties.
Well, no, they could be replacing a fence, for example.
True.
They could be constructing a fence, they could be, so.
Counselor?
Right. And one thing I do understand is the idea of the wood fence is a fortification type issue that is trying to be avoided by the bylaw. I still need another minute to think about the gate.
You don't have much longer
No, I
because
know.
Counselor Gallo's second time and I'm a second time, and then I think I'm calling the vote. so.
I'll know by then.
Counselor Gallo.
Thank you. I think this argument that if we say no to this, which I may very well be voting for that, but that we know that there are many other bylaws out there that people are not complying with. It's just a matter of someone complaining then that someone is encroaching on the sidewalk or so if there's non-compliant, it's a matter of someone bringing it to our attention, and I'm okay with that. But if we play that argument through, then can someone go around all of the neighborhoods and measure the fences that are currently non-compliant, and we have to tell them to fix it? If we go down this path, we have to tell them to fix it. If the concept is going forward as of November 12th, anything going forward, well, how did we choose that date? Was there a fence built or a gate built last week that is okay, but tomorrow it's not? Or vice versa? This was built a year ago. Were there others that were built 6 months ago? I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense. We need to take two approaches, one or another. Either we say we fix the current bylaw to allow the majority of them that are out there to be in compliant, or we stick to this, and every other one out there is going to have to fix the height of their gate. I don't think we can have it both ways. I'm prepared to actually send this back to staff and review the bylaw and come up with some suggestions on a broader scale to solve this problem, as opposed to, a one-off. I don't think we're going to solve this tonight by simply saying no to this resident, because tomorrow they could go out and measure a whole bunch of fences, let bylaw know, and they won't be in compliant, and we'll be back at this table. So I move to refer this to staff and have them come back with some suggestions on revisiting the bylaw and how to address the broader issue.
Do I have a seconder for that? Counselor Gardner. This is to refer it back to staff. Did you get it all? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just right now, what's on the screen is to be referred back to staff, but I think it's important that the condition as well be included, that staff report back on more, or the other issues, or I didn't know how you want to word that, Councillor.
I want it to be successful, so I wouldn't mind hearing from Ms. Van Leeuwen in terms of how she might approach it based on what she's heard at the table.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a couple of things. We would certainly do some research in terms of what other municipalities do. There are a couple things I want to just bring to your attention that there also is statute of limitations in terms of timelines and when we address non-compliance issues. So we are running out of time to take any further action with respect to this fence, as there are limitations around enforcement and those issues. So referring it back to staff may prevent us from moving forward if we were to return and council's decision was to refuse the fence.
So I guess,
What's the date? Do we know?
do you have a date? Do you know the date? Sorry.
Statute of limitations, it's a year or 2 years. I'd have to double check. Yeah, I'd have to double check.
And how long have we been dealing with this?
Well, it came to our attention in August of 2018. But
So it's been well over a year.
yeah. And the other thing, if you recall the standard operating guideline for bylaw and entering properties, that one of the criteria around complaints is that the complainant had to reside within 150 meters of the property, and they had to provide their information in order for us to accept the complaints. That way we wouldn't get blanket complaints from all across town.
Councillor?
I'd be interested in knowing if that statute of limitations is 2 years, in which case we would have time. Any way of finding out whether it's 2 years or how much time we have left?
I'm just looking at Ms. Desario. She says typically statute of limitations is 2 years. I know, for example, in the Building Code Act, though, it is different. It is 1 year in order for us to take enforcement. So I would just want to verify that, but there are timelines.
So
Councillor?
in terms of the motion, though, if we direct staff to, sorry, it's on the, what's on the screen, is that through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director? Does that give you sufficient direction?
So to refer back to staff and report back on solutions to this fence and any other fences that may not be in compliance. What kind of timeline would we be looking at for you to come back with something?
Well, if we're looking at all fences, through you, Mr. Mayor, if we're looking at all fences across town, this is a big undertaking. So this would, it would, I'm not certain what this would look like, because any other non-compliant fences, determining date of construction, determining whether or not they would be grandfathered under previous legislation or previous bylaws, all of those things would be very, very challenging.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't, my intent wasn't to have them look at every other fence. My intent was to look at the bylaw and come up with some ideas for us through what other municipalities do, and guide us to fix the bigger picture, and that is whether to stick with this or to change it in order to have compliance amongst many others that are not compliant. It's basically a review of the bylaw and to see what other municipalities are doing, best practices, and see if we can fix it.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have taken a look at other fence bylaws. Ours is not, it's pretty much aligned with other municipalities' bylaws. There are some bylaws that do contain variance provisions, as Councillor Gilliland has suggested. Caledon has variance provisions in there, and delegated staff, delegated authority to staff to approve some variances with some criteria outlined. But our standards are not, they're pretty much aligned with other fence bylaws. Because we did do an amendment to the fence bylaw about 1.5 years ago, and so we did that research at that time.
Councillor?
Yeah, I don't like the motion that's on the floor.
Why don't you think about the wording? We'll let Councillor Gardner continue, and then we can work on the wording. She wants to speak.
Yeah, we don't have a motion for
I know, but
this.
we all understand what you're saying. We just, if we can figure out the wording, maybe if you want to just work, Mr. Clerk, did you just want to work with Councillor Gallo and come up with the wording? And then I'll allow Councillor Gardner to speak at this time. Councillor Gardner?
Well, actually, at this point, I don't have anything else to add.
All right.
So,
I got a bunch
We
of other
got-
speakers
we-
all of a sudden, so
good.
I'll count that as one time for you. Councillor
Oh.
Gilliland, to the referral. Oh, here, I'll get it. Go ahead. Went back off again.
On?
Yes.
Okay. I understand where Councillor Gallo is coming from, and I know the wording needs to be kind of rejigged in some way, and I think that was kind of what I was touching on with regards to looking at the variance and wondering if, you know, we are speaking specifically on the gate, and we've already kind of addressed the wooden fence part, so when we are talking about this, I feel that we are addressing the gate issue, not the wooden fence. And I also want to point out that is staff's recommendation that was on the floor, that that the gate was exempt. So I do feel that there is some room to maybe refresh the bylaw and look at the variance, because you know, other municipalities, not just Caledon but Mississauga and others and such, have such tools in place to address something like this. It gives you a little bit of leeway in order to fill this void. And again, if 70% of these estate property driveway iron gates are out of compliance, it kind of questions as well, how did it get to that point, and why? Was there ever a complaint about these gates? Was it something that all of a sudden the town of Aurora was all upset because the residents said that these gates were obtrusive and fortification? I don't know, but I kind of feel and sense that maybe that was not the intent of looping that in the current bylaw, the fortification. It is pleasing to the eye, and you see through. It doesn't really at all spell fortification for me in this instance. And I also kind of want to remind my colleagues that the initial complaint was based on the wooden fence, and that measuring of the gate was more of a proactive approach. And just kind of going back on, you know, all these other fences that are out there, or gates that are out there, does this mean we're going to be proactive on that? And there's so many other things that I would love bylaw to be proactive on, which, you know, like, you know, weeds over 8 inches, or, you know, cars parked at Yelling Wellington when they shouldn't be during rush hour, or, you know, graffiti on our street, on our buildings in downtown. Is this something that we want to have as a proactive approach at this point? And I feel like the answer is that it's not, but I'm not the one to make that decision. So I support what Councillor Gallo is trying to do with the wording. I would like to see some sort of solution, whether there's a variance clause of sorts that would kind of help us through this, to kind of represent the majority of the iron gates that are already reflected in our town, and it does kind of conform to the neighborhoods. It's not like an outlier where it doesn't exist anywhere. There are quite a lot of large driveways out there with gated entrances, and maybe there is something we need to look at. I don't know what the bylaw looked at before 2005 for it to be not exempted. So maybe that is something we need to revisit. So I would be in support of what Councillor Gallo is trying to do here.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you. And you know, this item, as well as other items that's come before us in the past, it's all about. It's not necessarily just about this one item. It's the wider ranging issue that we've all discussed, and largely it's about, you know, enforcement. I mean, there are other municipalities that are in the same situation as Aurora, where you have limited resources to enforce bylaws, and you know, how do you prioritize what you enforce? And
Councillor, I don't mean to cut you off, but
okay,
to
so
the
I'm
referral.
going
To the
off-
referral.
okay, to the referral. So, I guess my point is, as I'm getting to that, is that you know, we've already completed a comprehensive bylaw review a couple of years ago. We did a sign bylaw review. I think we've done all that, and I think our staff, they have a good idea of what our peers, our fellow municipalities are doing. The real issue is how are we going to, at what point are we going to enforce? What are we going to enforce? So whatever the amendment looks like, whatever the referral or how we're going to refer it, it has to involve enforcement, and given the scarce resources that we have, which is obviously going to be prioritization on things that are going to be causing physical damage or costs. And I'll wait for the final wording, but I'm not sure bringing it back to staff to see what other municipalities are doing and whether they have other solutions. I think it's still going to come back to where are we going to draw the line in terms of enforcement and how are we going to prioritize.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to be against the referral. I've looked at this issue as an issue. I think that we already have, when it comes to compliance, on how we look at things. It's similar as a house that is an older house that encroaches on setbacks, and it's legal non-compliance. So same thing I look at it as this. That staff would look at it and look at the fence or the gate and say it's legal non-compliance. It was there by a certain time. The owner's not the owner that put it up, and so therefore it's legal non-compliance, and we would exempt it due to that fact. As I said, because it is someone that has built it and now is asking for forgiveness after. That's why staff are saying no. This needs to be enforced. And that's the way I look at it. I think we already have the parameters, we have the process put in place that allows us to do this correctly. And so I'll be against a referral. I think we need to make a decision on this before we get into an issue where we run out on the statute of limitation. So I will call for the vote on the referral. Is that the correct wording, Councillor, that you want? More or less? It's broad enough? Do you want it, how about we just add with fences and gates throughout the town? Do you want to do that? Fences and gates? Can we throw that? Is the seconder okay with that, Councillor Gardner? Can we just add in and gates? There we go. I'll call the vote on the referral. That carries. Next item. Mr. Waterston. David, can you just explain to them what's happened so they can have an understanding? Thank you. Move to motions. I'll pass the chair to Deputy Mayor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like to put your motion on the floor, please?
I'll move as is.
Seconder? Councillor Gilliland? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. This one here is when we were at AMO and we were looking at, they passed along a graph to us that showed the reliance on, well, the amount of taxes that the residential portion relies on is at 76%. And it's been trending upwards since 2001, and it's gone up 5%. There's a need for us to take proactive action to start to provide incentives for major office developments to come into our community. I mean, our community is highly desired, but there is an issue when it comes to your high-end major Class A office developments. They tend to move to Toronto. Not just because it's Toronto, but Toronto does exempt their development charges for everything above the second floor. So that's very highly sought after from a major corporation. And if we're able to do the same, and entice them to come to Aurora. I mean, the things that we provide in the town of Aurora are, as I mentioned, are well desired. We have an affluent community, and it's not just about bringing them in, but it's about bringing jobs in. It's about developing that economic development within our community. And we need to be leaders. We need to step ahead of the rest of York Region and provide an opportunity for our residents, so the burden of taxes does not fall on just them. That we change the trend where it keeps going up, and that reliance keeps falling on to our residents. That we change that, and it starts moving towards bringing in offices, and where they start paying a higher share of our taxes. And so this is an opportunity to bring in those major office developments, entice them to come here, and for us to provide a better community overall when it comes to economic benefits. These will create high-end jobs. Square footage of 75,000 square feet. Roughly, you're looking at about anywhere from 200 to 400 jobs being brought into our community. And then you need to look at how much, and I know you look at development charges and you say, well, you'll be giving away this fee. The fee for development charge on a 75,000 square foot building is roughly about $333,000. The amount of taxes that would come in, I know ours is a rough estimate. I've talked to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel about it, and it's depending on MPAC looking at it and what they would assess it at, could possibly change, but a rough estimate is roughly about $25,600. That would be the town of Aurora's portion of that. And so when you look at the long-term benefits, job creation, major corporations coming in, taxes being collected, burden off of our residential communities, our residents, they're all bonuses for waiving and exempting a one-time fee.
Any questions and comments? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I'm in support of this. I just, what type of, I guess, reporting can we somehow, so the council is aware of, should this come up and it's agreed upon that a particular developer gets the benefit of this, how would council be made aware? So a report, an annual report, or so you may have missed.
I'm sorry,
read.
I missed the mayor's.
I'm just asking about will there be any reporting to council should any of this be enacted? If we were to move forward with a particular development and we agreed with this, how would council be kind of in the loop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suspect there would be a summary report on an annual basis to advise council on which sites have taken advantage of this program and also the amount that they have received in an exemption.
Would you be willing to add that or somehow codify that so that council is aware of?
And Councillor, I'm perfectly fine with that, and I would just add, and I think I'm correct on this, that if someone was applying to develop something, they might be approved as far as from being waived from the development charges, but that application would still have to come before us in a public planning meeting, and we would still be able to have those discussions, so we'd be aware before anything gets approved anyway. So I think that there's that measure there as well, and I see Mr. Waters nodding. So, I mean, if you want to put it in to make it more comfortable, I'm fine with that, but I think that through the process, we
If
would
it's
still
inherent
achieve it.
in the process, as long as, I mean, the end goal, as long as council is aware when this is happening, so it may be a good news story, and we want to let everyone know as well.
No, definitely, and I think it's going to come through that public planning process. Did you want to add that, or? Okay.
Thank you. I'm in sort of supported the motion, but as we know, development charges are twofold. There's just not just the towns, but there's also the region's development charges. So how will the region's development charges work for those that qualify?
So the region's portion on something of this size, 75,000 square feet, 3-floor minimum, they could apply for a 5-year deferral on the region portion. The region is not exempting. They put forward a program to defer. And the region's portion on this size is 1.7 million, I think, roughly.
Thank you. You put forward a very good case for the exemption. Just curious why the region doesn't follow your logic and look to exempt.
Do you want me to give the region's decision, or do you want me to give you my decision on why the region's not doing it?
Both.
I would say that I would say at a regional level, it's probably due to the fact that I would prefer that they exempt it, because I think that we can entice. I think the region as a whole needs to bring in more Class A office development into the region, and need to start to make that move away from. People need to start making that move away from Toronto to create that what they call a perfect region. It's unfortunate that I would say that the region is a little bit behind on their development charge collections, and therefore I feel there's some pressure to not exempt at this time, and that's why they went with a deferral program instead.
Thank you. Appreciate the information.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I read that too in the regional report about the deferral, so I'm glad that question was answered, because I was wondering how that would connect from one to the other, so thank you for answering that question. Just as an example, just for the purpose of the audience, 75,000 square foot to 3,000, would that be something comparable to, say, like a Desjardins building coming to Aurora? Would that be something as a visual?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm seeing nods. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as like I mean, I see a lot of positives to this and attracting businesses and major development here, which we so need. You touched on tax collection, and we would get revenue from that, and it would be a pretty substantial amount. Could you maybe expand on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as I mentioned, you're looking at our portion of the taxes collected on something roughly around this size. It's about just over 25,000. But then, you'd also have to look at what impact would assess it down the road. So it could be higher, could be a little bit lower. We don't have the exact figure on that, but roughly that's what we're looking at. So over a 10-year period, you're looking at about a $250,000 collection in taxes from that. But it also, as I mentioned, it changes the percentage of how much of the burden is put on our residential side, right? And that's been increasing ever since 2001. And so we need to buck that trend. And I think this is a good start to get us to start making that downward from our residential side.
I agree. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Going back to the size, if it is about as big as Desjardins, we don't have any properties left in Aurora that would accommodate, or very few. Where?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the whole employment lands
Emery Development?
on the 404 corridor. There are a number of sites available that can accommodate office development at 75,000 square feet or more.
Thank you. I forgot about Emery Developments. So, that's 300,000 is a pretty big building.
The 300,000 is what we would cap it at.
Right.
So if you just took it in simplistic terms, 75,000 square feet, 300,000, you're basically looking at 3 buildings at 75,000 square feet each. Or you could have one at 300,000, which I don't think would happen, but you could. But we're capping it at 300,000, saying that once it goes above that, we would revisit this and decide whether we would want to add more or we would stop it.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to the job creation, do we want to make it more specific? I know there's been talk in the past about creating a campus for certain types of industries or businesses. Or, I mean, do we want, and I think that economic development has a plan about our economic development officer or office has a plan about developing certain kinds of businesses. Does anybody at the council table know about that? And would we be targeting something special that maybe is very attractive, would be attractive to our community and sought after by other communities, but we would give an advantage?
Well, I can say from the board, when I was sitting there, and I did bring this up with them, and I let them know that I was bringing this forward. They were all very excited at the opportunity of being able to present this and start to provide an incentive to attract those major office developments. As far as what types, I mean, if you ask staff, and I think this was mentioned to me, is that there's already been a bit of a buzz. Some people have called in to inquire about this motion and when it will be approved, so because they're somewhat interested in possibly coming forward.
Okay, thank you. I think at one point there was the idea of doing a medical campus on Bayview. But I don't know, but maybe we need to think it through to make it really successful for us to decide what we want, as opposed to just attracting economic growth and jobs in general.
Well, Councillor, and I don't mean to go in the back and forth, but I would argue that a medical campus, unless
No, I don't.
it's not really an office. Okay, yeah, I'm just
Well,
saying
that's
it's not really an office.
that's what I'm saying. Sorry, that's what
We're
I'm
looking-
getting
we're-
to.
Yeah, we're speaking to Class A major
You're
office
talking about
development.
office,
Yeah,
just office.
development.
So these are white-collar jobs. Major office. And if we gave an exemption like this, could it be that the whole building is, doesn't consist of commercial? Because commercial really isn't considered economic development. And right now, I think we're allowing 15%, or the region is allowing 15% of a building main floor to be retail. So, if we're going to let this go, if we're going to give this incentive, let's not give it to the retail sector. Let's make sure it is those high-paying, full-time benefits jobs.
Once again, Councillor, it's for Class A major office development. Those wouldn't meet, or like a retail component wouldn't meet the requirements from just the general meaning of what a major office development is. And just to go back to what Toronto does, there's a reason why Toronto does not exempt the first floors, because usually most of the time it's retail. As you know, most towers in Toronto, they have retail first floor, office above that, and that's why they don't exempt that first floor. And I don't think we would have that issue. And it's a different meaning, so it wouldn't be exempt. It wouldn't fit within what we're exempting. We're exempting major office development.
Thank you. And in major office development, and perhaps staff could check it out, in major office development, they are allowed to put in 15% retail, and it used to be 20%, and now it's down to 15%. So, but it doesn't mean a building has to have that, but they're allowed to have that. So if we are going to offer this incentive, then let's make sure the building is completely filled with Class A. I mean, it makes sense. Especially in a business park like the Emery along the 404, there's going to be other buildings in that development that offer retail opportunities, and we've got, the smart centers just south of that. So it's not that there's a lack of shopping should it be required. Thank you.
Sir Gallo for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify the property tax portion of this, I think you had mentioned some 25,000 or Aurora's portion. On 75,000 square feet, unless I'm mistaken, somewhere around $2 to $250 a square foot is the property taxes, which will bring us to $150,000, $180,000. Aurora's portion is only 25,000.
So Councillor, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have roughly, this is, once again, it's a rough estimate without MPAC actually doing any assessment. you're looking at about 120,000 total, 25,200 town portion, 30,000 the region portion, and 64,800 the education portion.
That's what the breakdown is.
That's
eh?
the breakdown.
That sucks.
That does suck, but that's the breakdown. I'm not going to disagree with you that it sucks, but that's the breakdown.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you. One of the things we're trying to do here is move the needle a little bit. When I first got elected, one of the first things we dealt with was the Smart Center property on the south side of Wellington Street, and the council at the time limited the retail there and forced them to agree to build, I think it was 3 or 4 office buildings, which have yet to be built. And I believe there are similar site plans for the Smart Center property on the other side. But either way, it's now been almost 10 years and those office buildings haven't been built. And everybody on council for those last 3 terms have always advocated that, it would be great if more Aurorans could work close to home, and we'd love to see more office come. And so if this helps move the needle a little bit and get some of those offices built and attract some good companies, I'm all for it.
Thank you. And, I'm also in favor of the motion. I think it's welcome. And I recall, I don't know, 2-3 years ago when we were trying to get hotels built into Aurora for same reasons, increase our economic scale and other opportunities and revenue generating opportunities as a town. The biggest hurdle was development charges, and as soon as the town exempted our portion, we immediately had 2 or 3 different hotels wanting to construct in our municipality, and indeed that's what happened. And so I'm very hopeful, and I'm very encouraged that this would do the same in office buildings. I recall a couple of years ago as well, a very successful hedge fund manager in downtown Toronto. He lives in Aurora, needed some office space and couldn't find one office space, and he's willing to purchase property to build something, but he couldn't find anything appropriate. I see, when I was talking to the owner of Apple offices, Apple Suites, next to the GO Train Center, or GO Train station, he has a waiting list. And I know that's a different office market, but it goes to show you that there is a demand for here in Aurora. So I'm a strong proponent of the motion, and I look forward to it. Councillor Gardner, I think this is the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to what Councillor Thompson said, business parks have certain parameters, and I believe, and they're in our official plan policies. And I believe that one of the parameters, limits retail for good reason, because it's a business park, and we want to attract those kind of jobs. So that's something else we could do. We could look at our official plan policies, and some of them come down from the region or have to comply with the region. So we could have a look at those policies. This is just a beginning, and it needs more meat, but the idea of it is very good. We just need to make sure we do it right.
Thank you. So, yes, Mr. Mayor, for final comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree, this is not the be-all, end-all, but I think this is exempting these development charges is a positive step that I think that distinguishes Aurora and makes it a more attractive place for large office development to locate. And I think that's what we're looking for. We've seen the challenges, as Councillor Thompson mentioned. Councillor Gallo, you've been sitting on council for a while, and you've seen the challenges where they come and they say, yeah, we're going to give that percentage for office spaces, and it never happens. They come back a year or 2 years later, and they say, you know what, we're finding it's a bit of a struggle to get that office development to come in here. So can we do a little bit more retail and leave that office off, right? And so it's always moving, and we never get that office that we need, those office developments that we need. And I think this is a way of saying, listen, you know what? We're gonna be at the forefront. We're gonna be leaders. We're gonna make some changes, and we're gonna ensure that we're gonna bring those high-paying jobs at office development within our community and allow for people to actually, which is part of our model, live, work, and play in our town. And so I'm thankful to hear that there's support around the table and that we're gonna be moving this direction and lead this region with this exemption.
Thank you. So let's call a vote. Tabulators, please. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move on to Mayor Marax's second motion, motion B. Mr. Mayor,
I'll move as is.
seconder. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you,
Sir?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, you know what? I think this one's pretty straightforward. I mean, with a lot of the stuff in the news, you're hearing a lot about Airbnbs and short-term rental accommodations and the issues that are going on within other municipalities. And I think it behooves us to be proactive in this instance and ask staff to look at how we can come up with some regulations. Right now, we have none. We have no regulations. And so let's take that step. Let's ask staff to look at what we can do to ensure that we don't fall into those issues and those problems that are happening in other municipalities, because I can assure you, right now we're not hearing anything. Right now nothing's happening too much. But once other municipalities, and they are, passing regulations, the problem Airbnbs are going to tend to flock to where people don't have any regulations. And so that's why I think it's important for us to move forward on this as quickly as possible and have staff look at something that can come back to us, and then we can decide on how we would want to move forward. By all means, I am not looking for us to ban Airbnbs or short-term rental accommodations. I don't think any of us, and I'm not sure, but I would think that none of us would look to ban them. I can't say I have had some conversations with YRP as well, and there is some thought, and they've looked into this, and they've kind of had some initial discussions of possibly doing something similar to that what the fire department has done, where you basically charge the offender. So basically, if there is a call and YRP needs to go out to an Airbnb or a short-term rental accommodation, that bill for YRP gets sent to the property owner. And so that's something I think that I would like staff to look into, because I know that if that's to occur, it would take us to putting it onto the tax bill. And so it needs us to say that, yes, we would do that. But I think that's something that we need to look at, because it puts the onus on the property owner to say, hey, listen, if you are going to rent out your property, then you're going to make sure that you're not renting it to become the party house. And so I think that does help out. And so maybe it's something that that staff can look at when they look at what they're going to bring back to us. Maybe you can have a conversation with YRP. I would really appreciate that as well, and see what their thoughts are, because I think it's a good road to go down. Maybe.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm so glad that we're going to address something before something bad actually happens. I have heard of stories through certain friends of family where they've been part of Airbnbs where bad things have occurred, and we don't want them to happen. And I also think the people that actually do run B&Bs out of their homes, that do follow the rules and they do comply, and they want these regulations. They don't want the bad apples to ruin it for them. I don't think a total ban is something that we would want to walk down, but they're asking to have some sort of licensing or regulation or something that we can all follow and kind of respect, so we can avoid that. I do like this idea. Hopefully they'll explore the idea of charging the property owner. I do think it does make them think twice about who they're actually renting to, and it develops an accountability. At the same time, it's important that we do offer short-term rentals for various reasons, and I think there is a need for it, and I'm really looking forward to what staff can come back to.
Any other questions or comments, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I also agree with this. I think it's an important idea, and we're not talking about reinventing the wheel. We have some good examples of what municipalities have been doing. So, Ms. Van Leeuwen, I know you have a heavy workload, but I think this one is manageable, and I think it would really be to the benefit of Aurora. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
I'm just confirming that the motion just asks for a report from staff.
That's it.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? We'll put it to a vote. That passes unanimously. I'll pass the chair back to the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Regional report. Someone like to move it? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Gardner. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see that the region is to pilot photo radar in school zones.
Yes.
So I still have a motion pending. I think it must be 4 years old by now. But could you kindly keep us up to date on this? And how is it? I mean, we're waiting for the province to approve it. How is it that the region can do a pilot on this? Do you have any idea?
The issue, and maybe Ms. Van Leeuwen can elaborate, I think, on, can you, or would you know, or would it be Ms. DeSario? I think the issue that's been longstanding is how you would be collecting the fees, and that's where they're struggling. The pilot, they still haven't mentioned to me, and I think no one at the region yet knows exactly which locations, just as of yet. Obviously, I would love to try have a pilot in Aurora, and I've mentioned that. But once I do get more information as far as where they will be, I will let everyone know, and I'll pass that information along.
Thank you very much. The other thing I see here is interesting. It's attracting business and housing, in this case, to city centers. And they're talking about something very close to what you're suggesting. So the region thinks it's a great idea.
Is that about the deferrals?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
Office buildings between 75 and 150 square feet located in regional city centers. But they're also looking...
They have much bigger ones that get a deferral for 10, 15, and 20 years as well. Then you're up to about 500,000 square feet for a building that can get, like, I think, a 20-year deferral.
Yes, and they're trying to take care of take use of public transit, regional public transit. So that's why they're in city centers, and that would also be a great place for, as we've talked about, affordable, purpose-built rental. So I know we're not ready for that, but I could still think about it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. You've kind of answered it already, but I was going to ask the question about where the pilots would be for the photo radar, and just because it's York Region, whether it's going to be limited to regional roads, or would they also consider, local roads as well? And I guess the answer really is it's still to be determined.
It's still to be determined, but if you want my honest opinion, it's probably going to be somewhere in the south end. But yes, and I will advocate as strong, as hard as I can to make sure that we can get one. But it's going to be a tough ride, because I think they're only going to do about maybe about 3 locations. So it's going to be tough to get one up here in Aurora. Any other questions on the regional report?
Didn't catch it. Will operate one mobile automated speed enforcement unit. The unit will move to different community safety zones across all 9 cities and towns.
Well, there we go.
So there we go.
We will get it at some point. We might be at the end of the pilot, but we'll get it at some point.
And probably not for very long, but there you go.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Call the vote. That carries. Counselor, I was just sorry. I was going to add that might be that might be because I told them I really want it there, so maybe they changed that. New business. Counselor Gallo, to my left. Counselor Thompson. New business. Counselor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we know when we're going to get the results to the survey on the wards? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Clerk.
Absolutely. The options report will be coming out in about two and a half weeks from now. And that contains a bunch of a number of the results from the survey. So will be a lot of information contained in that. And there's also going to be the final report to council will also detail it. So there'll be two different opportunities for council to see the options report won't be coming to council. It'll be available to the public, but that'll detail the public consultation as well as the final report.
Counselor.
Thank you. So you think the survey results might come in a few weeks?
2.5 weeks, roughly.
2.5
That's
weeks.
what I
How
got.
could we
2.5
do that?
weeks. That's right.
Okay. Mr. Clerk is.
Mr. Clerk.
End of November, very start of December.
There you go.
Thank you. And I do have a question and I've heard it asked quite a lot. In that survey, did people have to identify themselves as living in Aurora? And could they do the survey more than once?
Mr. Clerk.
We asked people to identify themselves or list a major intersection or even an intersection located close to the residence, and the survey wouldn't have allowed them to do it from the same device. However, I believe if they wanted to go to a different device, they could have done that.
Counselor.
In future, could we ask for their residential address? And could we also, is there any way we could, prevent somebody from actually doing the survey more than once or twice or 10 times if they use a lot of computers?
Mr. Clerk.
Through Mr. Mayor, when we get into residential addresses, we might get a bit close to personal information that there's no need for us to have. So we could look at something different, but I'm hesitant to go all the way to residential addresses. And then I'll certainly speak with communications to see if there's any way to limit a second person or a person doing the survey multiple times.
Counselor.
Thank you. And I do remember in the Stable Neighborhoods exercise, a lot of people self-identified their address. But what you're saying is we can't ask it because it might be a privacy issue. Okay, thank you.
Is that all?
That's all for new business.
Thank you. Counselor Kim, new business. Counselor Gilliland, new business.
We're good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to talk about this motorhome. I know that this has been an issue that's been a hot topic, and a lot of the residents are angry. They're upset. They feel like their voices are not being heard. There has been some new revelations about this situation, a couple of them being confirming that the resident claimed person who owns this broken down motor vehicle does not sleep at this facility. So they do go to a hotel somewhere in a different town and sleep there and may spend maybe an hour at this broken down trailer. And I find it very frustrating that we have an unlicensed vehicle that sits partially on town property, and yet we can do nothing about it. Looking at one of the bylaws here, it says, notwithstanding any other provision by this bylaw, any vehicle parked or left standing on any highway or any other property owners or occupied municipality for a period of exceeding 24 hours shall be considered to be abandoned upon discovery. A police officer or municipal law enforcement officer may cause it to be moved or stored in a suitable place, and all costs and charges, remove, care, and storage thereof, if any, are a lien upon the vehicle, which can be enforced in a manner provided by the relevant provisions of the Repair and Storage Liens Act. I'm reading this because I know some of the argument has been that the gentleman has been living in this trailer, but in fact is using it as a place to kind of hang out. And I don't, I can see, I understand the residents are frustrated. It's a vehicle that's broken down. It doesn't run. It was towed, pushed in there, and we simply cannot wait any longer for this trailer to sit there for another couple months. The town has to do something, and we need to stand up. We must have the power to do something. Ms. Van Leeuwen, do you think maybe you could explain a little bit about some of these new revelations that we feel the residents have not been addressed, and out of respect for the residents as well, the kind of answers that we can get to move this forward?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this matter is now before the courts and is in legal proceedings. So there is a first appearance that has been scheduled for January 16th in courtroom T2 at the Tannery in Newmarket. In terms of moving the vehicle, that provision states that we could move the vehicle to a suitable location. We could push the vehicle back. That might be, it is his personal property. And we want to give him the ability to defend himself appropriately in a court of law.
So are you saying then that that is the only place that we could move that vehicle, is pushing it back on their property versus taking it and removing it and storing it somewhere else? It doesn't seem to really specify where, but to me, this tells me that we have the power to remove this based on what this says to me right here.
I'm going to go to Ms. Desario on this.
Through you, Mayor Marakis. Because it's now before the courts, I encourage that this discussion does not take place. We do have an agreement with the Ministry of Attorney General that talks about prosecutions and what might be said in an open session may affect the outcome of the proceeding. We also have a litigation policy that does state that once a matter is before the courts, council is encouraged not to talk about it openly and to direct any communication through to one of us.
Councillor?
I guess my issue is waiting until January and yet nothing is going to be done, or possibly nothing may be done. In the interim, I'm just trying to understand kind of where our rights are and what we can do as a town, and if there's something within our powers that we can do, I want to do it.
Okay, Councillor, I'm sure we're all frustrated, and we all feel what you're feeling. But definitely, if we can take it offline, I think at this point, and we'll have those discussions and make sure that we're adhering to Ms. Desario's recommendation as far as speaking about this in a public forum at this time. Is that fine?
That's fine. I just need to really voice that and where
That's
I
fine.
stand and the residents, and that we're not happy with the results so far.
That's fine. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for new business? Before I go to public service announcements to you? You have a new business? Go ahead.
Just requesting an update on the, and it may not have any other update, but I do want to have some sort of update on the tow trucks on Edward Street, and whether or not there's any new information moving forward with the new amendments with the licensing, and if there's any powers that be that we can utilize in order to mitigate the issues we're having with the parking of the tow trucks on the streets where they shouldn't be.
Ms. Van Leeuwen. You looked eager to push your button.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are reviewing licensing requirements. Our plan is to come forward with some amendments so that we will license tow trucks. We are actively issuing tickets along Harrison and Edward, and I think we issued, I want to say 30, 40 tickets yesterday, actually. So it's an ongoing thing. The tickets are being paid. So they are paying their tickets. we continue to enforce, and we will look at licensing tow trucks.
And I thank staff very much for going out there and ticketing. And I know that you have had to tag team just for other safety concerns. And I really do appreciate that you guys are on top of that. Would you happen to have some sort of timeline on when you're going to bring that to council?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say Q1, Q2 of next year. We have a number of bylaws now that are under review that we will be reporting back on. Noise bylaw, our property standards bylaw will be coming forward, clean communities bylaw, licensing bylaw, Airbnb now, fence bylaw. So it's a workload issue. So I don't imagine it'll be before Q2 of next year.
Counselor?
Thank you. Well, I might put the pressure on to try and move that up a little bit further, just because it's been an ongoing issue for much longer than these new bylaws that are being requested. So I may continue to ask and hopefully be able to influence you to move that up the inbox. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I'll go back to you, Counselor, for public service announcement.
Great. Join us on November 20th, 2019 at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex from 6 to 9 p.m. as we celebrate and showcase the great ideas and innovations of youth in grades 4 to 12 at the Youth Innovation Fair. For more details, visit aurora.ca/youth innovation. It's Desjardins Day on Wednesday, November 13th. This means a whole bunch of free programs for you to enjoy, including public swimming, skating, family drop-in, gym, and youth drop-in basketball. Again, for more information, visit aurora.ca/Desjardins Days.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kim?
Thank you. Please join us for Aurora's Christmas Market, a 3-day outdoor event, November 29th, 30th, and December 1st at Aurora Town Hall. In your go-to spot for some amazingly unique, festive, delicious, and creative gifts. Celebrate the magic of Christmas with friends and family. Wander through the market and enjoy the lights, festive atmosphere, caroling, buskers, and so much more. And you don't want to miss our traditional Christmas tree and peace candle lighting on the Friday evening at 6:15 p.m. And for more details, visit aurora.ca/Christmas Market.
Counselor Gardner?
I had the great pleasure of being at the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority Awards last week, and I'm very happy to say that the town of Aurora got 2 Healthy Water Awards. One was for salt reduction, and one was for the removal of a fish barrier at the Sawmill Dam, which permits cold water fish to spawn upstream. I'd like to thank our parks and operations staff for their excellent work. I think they were very proud to receive the awards, and I was very proud to give it to them. Thank you.
Very good.
There was a young lady at this ceremony. She received the Ernie Crossland Young Conservationist Award. Her name is Nari Huang. Remember that name, Nari Huang. Incredible. I would like to ask, and I'm not sure who the appropriate person is, the night of the Lake Simcoe Conservation Awards, there was also the awards ceremony for the fire department and the Sport Aurora. So, is it possible, maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Clerk, to try and spread these out? Or I don't know how you could do it, but to have to decide between 3 important functions, and especially between fire and, in my opinion, between fire and conservation, fire protection and conservation, that's we should be, as a council, honoring both of those. So if I could just leave that with you and perhaps Mr. CAO. We had the same problem with the Remembrance Day dinner at the Legion, and there was also a fundraiser for Welcoming Arms, and nobody from council was at the Legion dinner except for Mayor Maracas. He made a quick appearance and then popped over to Welcoming Arms. And really, these are very important events that deserve our support. And I don't know, Mr. Clerk, how it can be done, but will you see if you can work a miracle and
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will try to get the groups to help us coordinate.
Thank you.
Of course, it's not in our hands. These are independent groups that often just schedule these things and send us the notice. In the case of the fire recognition, we did identify when that came out that there would be a conflict right off the bat, and they didn't want to move their event, so often there's little we can do about the actual conflict in the end.
perhaps when it's groups that are really doing their best to help our community, like the Conservation Authority and Fire Department. I mean, crucially involved in protecting our community. Perhaps they need to take precedence, or maybe we kind of give them a little elbow early in the year. I'm guessing that some of these groups, these established groups, have their awards dates already for next year.
And Councillor, I'll just add, if they do have them, we encourage them to get them
I'll
to
pass
us
it
as
on.
soon as possible, because the problem sometimes lies with the fact that we get these dates at a very late time, and something's already been committed to.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to go back after you've committed to something and say, hey, by the way, we can't come now because something else has come up.
Okay, I'll take it upon myself to speak to Fire, York Region Fire, and the Conservation Authority. Thank you.
Perfect.
And also the Legion.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Mayor, I'm not sure if you said something at the start of the meeting, because I wasn't here, and I apologize for that, but I just wanted to extend another thank you, if this was the case, to the Legion, and to the individuals, the groups, the organizations, the residents who came out and participated in the Remembrance Day service both yesterday as well as the various events on the weekend. The weather wasn't the greatest yesterday, but you know, it was wonderful to see so many people out of all ages participate in the service yesterday, and certainly always they deserve our heartfelt thanks.
Well said.
As for PSAs, our next big event, don't miss the magic of the Santa Under the Stars Parade. This annual nighttime tradition continues on Saturday, November 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. The parade will travel along Yonge Street from Orchard Heights Boulevard to Murray Drive. This nighttime parade is full of magic with beautifully decorated floats, incredible marching bands, and a few special guests, including the Jolly Man in Red himself. For more details, please visit aurora.ca/Santa Parade. And as we know over the years, whether it snows or not, the parade will still go on. We've seen some interesting weather over the years, but it's always a wonderful event. In addition, the 2020 Winter Recreation Program registration is now open for residents. To view the program guide, go online. To browse through the programs and courses, please visit aurora.ca/rec guide. And that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to congratulate an Aurora resident, Nala Khoury, for being selected as the 2019 Expert Rising Star at Miller Thomson. She's a fantastic person, excellent lawyer, and a great contributor to the town through many endeavors. Mavernack Park, I don't remember the exact name to name one of them. She's a fantastic person. I think she's also part of the Chamber board. Congratulations to Nala. PSA's winter overnight parking restrictions are in effect starting November 15th, 2019. Thank you to Bylaw for giving me the $0 notice for my vehicle. Through to April 15th, 2020. During these months, there is no parking on streets between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Parking restrictions will be enforced regardless of the current weather or road conditions during this time period. So be sure to park your vehicle off the roadway during the restricted hours. The fine for each offense is $50. For more detailed information on winter overnight parking, or to find out real-time information about when your street has been or will be plowed, please visit aurora.ca/snow. Community Services and Bylaw and Animal Services have relocated offices to the Joint Operations Center. Community Services will not be accepting program registration at the new location. If you would like to register for a program, please visit aurora.ca/eplay or in person at the SARC or the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone mention the Innovation Fair? Yes. So it was mentioned. Yes. That's what I thought. You're welcome. So before, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview afterwards, but I'm just going to read what's here. So thank you to our residents who were able to attend the recent open house at the Aurora Armory this weekend. Actually, and anyone that did attend, I happened to go in. It was a steady stream of excited residents that were going in there. And I mean, it's quite amazing to hear a lot of them about the excitement that they were feeling walking into that building. Aurora Council is extremely proud to officially welcome the Canadian Food and Wine Institute at Niagara College to our community. We're excited for what this means for our town and our focus of creating a vibrant community hub. And if you didn't have a chance to attend the open house, then you can always visit auroraarmorycfwi.ca to check out the variety of programs and classes. Beyond that, I wanted to thank staff, our CAO, for all the hard work. I know, Al, you pushed them. You got the place done, and I might add, got it done under budget. And so, you know what? I think this is an extremely proud moment for the town, where we've created a unique partnership, and I know Niagara College is very excited about it. I think we all saw the excitement on the opening night. And like I said, I mean, seeing the community go through there and seeing the excitement that they're having and seeing this building, I think a bravo to all of staff for all the hard work over the last couple of years to make this a reality. So thank you. And also, you know, to council, like those council members that were there, we pushed through a lot to get to where we are today. We had resolve to see this through right to the end and make those decisions that the community expect us to make. And so bravo to each and every one of you for making those decisions. So thank you, everyone. You know, the community's in a better place today. Bylaws. Someone like to move? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gilliland. Comments, questions? Call the vote. That carries. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gartner. Call a vote. That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gartner, Councillor Gallo, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.